Hello, I'm Alonso Aguirre. I'm Executive Director of the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation and also a professor at George Mason University. My background, to let you know, has been always loving nature, growing up in Mexico, in Baja California, Mexico. In fact, my grandfather used to feed us sea turtles, and that's my conservation side. However, growing up by the ocean taught me how to love biodiversity and the environment. A few years later, I ended up in veterinary college. So I got a veterinary degree and then a master's and PhD from Colorado State University in Fort Collins, where I decided to train myself as a wildlife biologist and in protected area management. Back then, I also saw the need of bringing health and disease into these wild populations. I was seeing animals getting stressed out, getting immunosuppressed, and getting a disease, and then a crash. And now, almost 30 years later, we're seeing the same over and over and over again with many populations. So I decided to head to Oregon State University, where I did a postdoctoral fellowship with National Park Service, working with ungulates like elk, deer, moose, and look at what diseases cattle or livestock were transmitting to wildlife. And then after that, I decided to come back to Colorado State as a professor, assistant professor. I did my sabbatical in Sweden, working with foxes, with roe deer, many of those projects in epidemiology. By the 90s, I started working with sea turtles on a tumor disease that affects sea turtles globally, all species, but mostly green turtles and loggerheads. That's called fibropapillomatosis. And several years later, I ended up with National Marine Fisheries Service as their epidemiologist, working with sea turtles and monk seals. Finally, I saw this dream job as an international wildlife veterinarian. And with my training, it was just perfect for that job. I ended up with Wildlife Trust back in '98. And then for 14 years, I worked with them. First as a field veterinarian, then as the director of a new program, a new initiative called Conservation Medicine. That's a new discipline that I co-founded and actually published 2 books on the topic. And that's really bringing ecosystem health, animal health, and human health. That interaction we're calling ecological health. So the practice of ecological health is conservation medicine. Then I became a director, vice president. We were managing a global initiative called PREDICT, funded by USAID, to determine the next epidemic from wildlife. As you remember, on the 2003 or so, 1999, we had West Nile virus, 2003 SARS, 2005 H5N1, and more recently H9N7. That's killing Chinese at the moment. So after I became a senior vice president for EcoHealth Alliance, an organization working on the next epidemic from wildlife into humans, the next pandemic, and publishing many papers and writing books, I realized that people, the general public, haven't changed fast enough to protect our natural resources, our environment, to be green, to care for not trashing the planet. I decided to apply for this position, and probably because of my background, I was able to become the executive director of the new Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation. As executive director of the Smithsonian Mason School of Conservation, I really represent the face of the program towards the public, towards events, towards donors. I'm associate professor at the Department of Environmental Science and Policy at George Mason University, and with that, I chair the academic committee of the school, whereby several faculty from both institutions get together to discuss new programs. What I really want to do is create a pipeline. I think that's our greatest legacy, to create a pipeline whereby we bring the young generation through summer camps, ages 6 to 8 or 10, then high schoolers to come here to our facility, learn about our program, and then enroll them into our semester. This experience will lead into internships. I want to be a global hub of environmental activism. I want to turn conservation into a social movement. that people knows about it and they know why we have to protect our resources, our wildlife, our ecosystems, because it's good for our health, for the health of your children and the next generation.